We're going to be talking about adaptability and how to cultivate it. So this is incredibly important because a lot of times we think that our success in life is determined by our circumstances. If I'm born rich, then I will be successful. And if I'm born poor, then I won't be successful. But if you look at these two groups of people, there are some people who are born rich who end up kind of screwing up in life. And then there are some people who are born poor who end up being very successful. So what's the difference? It turns out that one of the major things that's different between success and failure, irrespective of your circumstances, is the ability to adapt. And it turns out that we are getting worse at adaptation. And many of the things that we're doing, which we think are moving us in the right direction, are actually harming us. And at the top of the list is finding the perfect solution. So nowadays, when I work with people, everyone is looking for the perfect solution. So people are looking for the right supplement, some magical supplement that will cure their anxiety, or even the right kind of meditation to cure their anxiety. They're trying to find the perfect partner. Despite the fact that we have 400 games in our Steam library, I'm looking for that one perfect game that makes me want to play. And it turns out that the more that we chase perfect solutions, the less adaptable we become. Hey y'all, today we're going to talk about something incredibly important, your personal data. It turns out that there are corporations called data brokers that will collect personally identifiable information. This is info like your birth date, where you were born, where your family members actually live, and even info like your social security number. They'll package this up and sell it to third parties. This isn't just about privacy, this is about safety, and that's where Delete Me comes in. I first used Delete Me about 4 years ago when I became a content creator to scrub my info from the internet. I submitted my info for removal and got a report back within 7 days. Not only that, but Delete Me has services that keep these companies from repopulating that record to keep your information off of the internet. So definitely check out Delete Me if you're interested in protecting your privacy and safety. Get 20% off Delete Me US consumer plans when you go to joindeleteme.com/healthygamer and use the promo code healthygamer at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/healthygamer, code healthygamer. And thanks to Delete Me for keeping mental health content on the internet free. So I'll illustrate this with a very quick example, okay? So let's say this is you. And this is what you want to achieve. And so what we go on doing in life is we're looking for the right kind of solution. So then we turn to places like the internet. And we're like, okay, how do I get from here to here? And someone says, this is the solution that will help you. And someone else says, this is the solution that will help you. But if we look at these solutions, they're not perfect to us, right? So we try what this person says, and we find that it doesn't quite fit. So we're like looking at someone else's solution, and then we sort of end up realizing like this doesn't work for me. And so what real adaptation is the opposite of actually looking for the perfect solution. Real adaptation is changing ourselves to fit the circumstances so that things work out. And if we look at society today, what we tend to find is that society is actually discouraging us from doing this. The way that society exists, it's making us less adaptable and more lazy. So I'll give you all like a simple example, right? So if you look at society today and you have a particular goal, you don't need to change to accomplish that goal. If you want to eat something, society will send you food to your doorstep. If you want groceries, we'll send you things to your doorstep. If you want to play a video game, we have so many video games right now that there's at least one video game that will perfectly match your interests. You like vampires, you like city building, you don't like competitive multiplayer. Hey, here's a vampire city builder single player game. On the flip side, I like FPS, but I don't really care about, I suck at aiming, so I want some kind of FPS that gives me auto-targeting and is also single player, so let me go ahead and play this game. The society that we exist in today is tailoring itself to us so much that we no longer need to adapt. But this creates a huge problem because if you look at life in general, adaptation is what leads to success. We know from the theory of evolution and natural selection that there's a lot of different species out there, and the ones that are able to adapt are the ones that survive. But adaptation doesn't just happen at the species level, it also happens at the individual level. We have these mechanisms of things like neuroplasticity, which is our brain's ability to adapt to a circumstance and actually change us in the moment. We also have, studies from the field of things like epigenetics, where our body will literally change the methylation state of our DNA and activate particular genes or reduce the activity of particular genes. So adaptation is crucial for success. And this is what I see in the people that I work with. And I want you all to just think about this for a second, okay? So there are a lot of people in life who face challenges. And for some reason, we got super caught up in this idea of resilience, which is like, when you face a setback, are you resilient? But what I've really seen is that people who are successful are the ones that are able to adapt. When they face a particular problem, they are able to change to address that problem. And what really sort of helps people advance in life is their ability to adapt. So on the one hand, you have people who don't adapt, right? They're the kind of people who, when faced with a challenge, I try things one way, and then I try it the same way, and then 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 it never ends up working out. And then there are other people who realize when they face an obstacle, they need to change. But that's not what we see nowadays, right? What we see nowadays is a society that tells you you don't need to change at all. If you're looking to date someone, you don't need to improve. You just keep swiping until you find the perfect person. That's literally what's going on, right? So you don't need to change your preferences for entertainment. You don't need to learn how to watch an enjoyable show. You need to keep looking through the millions of shows that are available at your disposal until you find the one that's perfect for you. Think about how absurd it is. The concept of changing yourself to enjoy watching a piece of television or some kind of TV show is so foreign. Except that is exactly what living organisms need to do to be successful. So today we're going to teach y'all how to increase your adaptability. The first thing that we're going to do is talk about black and white thinking. So if you look at clinical stuff, right? So you look at people who are depressed, people who have PTSD, if you look at clinical illnesses, what we tend to find is that the more black and white thinking you have, the less adaptable you are. And we know that the clinical interventions that we have, things like cognitive behavioral therapy or mentalization-based therapy, the goal of these therapies in some way is to reduce black and white thinking. So there's this disease called borderline personality disorder, which sort of is very, very challenging for a lot of people. And we know that one of the features of borderline personality disorder is black and white thinking. And literally in the process of therapy, what we try to do is reduce this thinking. So I'll give you all other examples of black and white thinking. It's all or none, right? So all men are bad, or all women are bad, or I am a loser. I will be alone for the rest of my life. There is zero chance that I will find a relationship. I will never be successful. This is all or nothing or black and white thinking. So it's either 100% or zero. There's no shades of gray. And literally what we know from the process of psychotherapy is when we have people who think like this, right? So let's take the case of someone who has depression and is suicidal. And they walk into my office and they say, there is no reason for me to continue living. There is a 0% chance that I will find joy in life. This is the nature. We call this like illness, right? We call this mental illness. When people are so stuck in their black and white thinking, we literally call it mental illness. And the goal of things like psychotherapy interventions, things like cognitive behavioral therapy and mentalization-based therapy for BPD and things like that, is to actually reduce this kind of thinking. We want to encourage people to see shades of gray, right? So when I'm working with someone who's depressed, they think in that moment that there is a zero reason to be alive. But as I work with them, they begin to increase the flexibility of their mind. They start to cognitively adapt a little bit. They're able to see shades of gray. Okay, so even though my life isn't great, there are some things that are going for me. And I want you to think about which one of these two people do you think is more likely to be successful? There is no reason for me to live anymore. Or, despite the fact that there are many disadvantages, I still have some things going for me. So what we want you to do is literally reduce the way that your mind works. Don't think in terms of black and white. Practically, the way that works is that you can't really control your thinking, but you can, at the beginning, notice it. So notice any time that you have a black or white thought, an all or nothing thought. I'll be alone for the rest of my life. I will never be successful. And your mind may feed you all kinds of evidence why this is true. But I hate to break it to y'all, but no human being on the planet can predict the future. Our mind likes to tell us that we can predict the future, but I have never seen a human being who can actually see into the future. So these thoughts are objectively wrong. If we really look at the world, what we know from tons of scientific research is that most things are something called multifactorial, which means that the reason that you failed is not because of one issue, it is because of a consequence of lots of different things put together. So what we want you to do is literally pay attention to all of your all or nothing thoughts, right? And the more that you pay attention to those thoughts, then what we want you to do is try to see the other side of it. So we want you to take a step back and notice, this is black or white thinking. How can I add some gray to the equation? Even though I am feeling like I will be alone for the rest of my life, what are some things that may actually make it possible for me to be not alone for the rest of my life? Try to add that shade of gray. And what you'll find is that this is very difficult for your mind to do. And that's exactly the problem, is that as people become less cognitively flexible, they get locked into a particular way of viewing the world, and then they cannot adapt, right? That thought becomes fixed. It becomes a reality. And then if you think you're going to be alone for the rest of your life, anytime you go on a date, that will influence the enjoyment of the date and the enjoyment of the partner. So it kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And we can fix this by increasing that cognitive flexibility. The second thing we're going to talk about is to not counter what you hear, even if you disagree with it. So y'all will notice that this is happening so commonly on the internet, where if someone shares a view, your mind automatically jumps to why that view is wrong, right? So if we look at the internet today, what we have is we have liberals and conservatives, we have Dota players and League of Legends players, we have, men versus women. We have a lot of people who automatically counter whatever other people tell them. So if a woman says, yeah, I'm a woman and it's scary for me I would rather be with a bear than with a man on a trail, right? And then automatically what happens is a bunch of dudes are like, oh my God, that's so bad, that's so bad. We don't even stop to try to consider someone else's perspective. And so as people will sort of give us information, we are not adaptable, right? We immediately reject it. And the more that you immediately reject things, instead of being flexible, the less adaptable you will become. It's kind of my way or the highway. So we even see this in gaming. So this is really important to understand. So some people are like hard stuck at bronze. They can play a game for 10,000 hours and they never improve. And these people will even go on forums and they'll start asking for help. They'll say, hey, this hero is overpowered. I'm having trouble advancing, I can't climb ranks. The matchmaking is rigged against me. They'll think all these kinds of things and people will counter them, right? I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, but sometimes people will say, hey, I want help with something. And then someone will offer help and they'll say, no, that doesn't work. Right? That doesn't work. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. This is cognitive inflexibility. And it turns out that some people can play 10,000 hours of a video game and they actually get better over time. And some people can play 10,000 hours of a video game and they will never get better. And this is true of life. Some people will be 30 years old and will be incredibly successful. They will adapt, they will change, they will improve. And some people will be 30 years old and they will be behind. What is the main reason for this? It is a lack of cognitive flexibility. Here is a study looking at rank in League of Legends. Cognitive flexibility and decision-making predicts expertise in the MOBA esport League of Legends. Results showed that cognitive flexibility was positively correlated with rank percentile at a p-value of 0.001. This is insane. Okay, I want y'all to realize what this study is showing us. This study is showing us that if you are hard stuck at bronze or in life, what this means is that if you become cognitively flexible, then you will actually improve in both of these dimensions. So we talked a little bit about clinical improvements, right? So we also see that cognitive flexibility predicts PTSD symptoms. So I'll show y'all this sentence right here. Individuals with better cognitive flexibility at 1 month post-trauma showed significantly less severe PTSD symptoms after 13 months. And then here's another study that shows this is looking at psychological flexibility as predictors of individual outcomes in hospital healthcare workers. So this is not just in gaming or mental illness. This is also in studies of just people who are working in hospitals. And what we find is that employees who show psychological flexibility are more likely to show greater openness to the acceptance of setbacks in the working environment and to carry on their valued living and working path. And this seems to correlate with individual well-being. So now we've looked at 3 studies, and I want y'all to really pay attention to this. So like in the case of trauma, this is something that is a traumatic setback. So there are 2 individuals, one of whom is not cognitively flexible and one of whom is cognitively flexible or adaptable. They both have bad stuff happen to them because in life, we cannot control that sometimes bad shit happens. But there is a huge difference in how you respond to that bad event. And if we look at healthcare workers, we know that bad stuff will happen. There will 100% be setbacks. But there are 2 types of people. For one person, a single traumatic event results in something called PTSD, which means one event lingers in their brain and continues to screw up their life. In another situation, we have someone who has a setback at work. They're able to carry on their valued living and working path, right? So some people, when they face a setback, give up. They are not perseverant. They can't adapt to their circumstances. This is a lack of adaptability, and it results in you being hard stuck at bronze. It results in more mental illness, right, which then screws over your future prospects. And it even results in things like not following through at work, giving up on a career path that you originally engaged in because you loved it in some way. And on the flip side, we have the people who are highly adaptable. And those people... And this is crazy, right? Like you look at some of these people, and I used to be both of these, right? There was a version of me that no fucking relationships, no money, failing out of college, playing a ton of video games, and I still sucked at video games. And today I have a career, gratefully, that I enjoy a lot. It's fun to be able to do this. I'm arguably in a happily married relationship, and I've got 2 kids. I have relationships. I'm even climbing rank in Dota right now. Like my MMR has gone up like 1,000 points. And this is not some way to humble brag and say like, oh, like what I'm saying is that I used to be both of these people. Like literally, like these are both me. The big difference is in one scenario, I was not adaptable, right? I kept on trying the same things over and over and over again. And once I started adapting to my circumstances, my IQ was always the same. It's not IQ. It's about your ability to adapt to your circumstances. So how can we increase this adaptability? It is to not counter what we hear. So people will tell you, hey, this kind of thing is true. And then immediately in your mind, you reject it. Immediately in your mind, you reject it. That is not adaptation. There's no flexibility. It is rigidity of the mind. So when someone tells you something that is contrary to your experience, the nature of adaptability is to try to understand it. Right? Try to actually steel man their argument instead of straw man their argument. Recognize that in your life, this is true for you in this particular state. But if you can understand how they can be right, if you can adapt your mind to that, you will literally improve. The third thing that we're going to talk about is somewhat related to that, and that's the most devastating statement that I hear, which is that this does not work for me. So a lot of people out there will offer solutions to your problems, and then you will say, this doesn't work for me. Oh, people say meditate first thing in the morning, but I'm not a morning person. That is a rigid statement. It is a black and white statement. Therefore, your solution does not work for me. Then you are stuck looking for the perfect solution. And this is the problem in life, is no one out there will make a solution just for you, right? They will make general solutions. So anytime you say this thought pops into your mind where this doesn't work for me, socialization doesn't work for me, dating doesn't work for me, the gym doesn't work for me, eating healthy doesn't work for me, working first thing when I wake up in the morning doesn't work for me. You are abandoning all of those solutions and you are looking for the perfect solution. And in doing so, you are failing to adapt. So instead, what you should do, and I've literally seen this in my office. So I'll have some people who are highly adaptable and very successful. And I'll say, okay, this is the kind of meditation that you should do, or this is how you should try to improve your relationship. And what they do is what doesn't work for them becomes an obstacle to solve instead of a reason to give up. So if I tell them meditate first thing in the morning, half of the people I work with will say, I'm not a morning person, so doesn't work for me. The next person, the opposite camp, says, okay, even though I have trouble waking up in the morning, the first thing that I need to do is wake up in the morning so that I can meditate first thing in the morning. An obstacle doesn't become a reason to quit. It becomes a problem to be solved. So anytime in your mind you hear this thought, oh, this doesn't work for me, instead ask yourself, how can I make this work for me? How can I adapt so that this solution can actually be successful? And then suddenly think about what that will do to your life, because there are 1,000 different solutions out there. The problem is they don't work for you. But the moment that you start adapting, all of these 1,000 solutions that don't work for you can suddenly start working for you. Then you can rely on the wisdom and experience of other people. And this is literally what I see in my practice. This is the change that I made in my own life. I start to make things work for me. This is the nature of adaptation. Now, as y'all are listening to this, I'm going to bet you money, I don't know how much money, that someone listening to this, even potentially the majority of y'all, will say, but Dr. K, what about this edge case? Are you saying that I should adapt to my abusive relationship and learn how to be happy even when the circumstances are bad? But Dr. K, I'm on the autism spectrum, or I struggle with social anxiety, and this may not work for me. And look at what you are doing. Here I am, arguably someone who's somewhat knowledgeable in helping other human beings attain success. I've done neuroscience research, I'm a psychiatrist, I'm a gamer, and I've even shared with y'all peer-reviewed scientific research about how cognitive flexibility improves rank in League of Legends. And there's going to be a group of y'all that are listening to this that will reject my approach about adaptability. You will reject this in your mind and you will say, this doesn't work for me for these reasons. Oh, you're saying this, but that doesn't, I've tried it and it didn't work. I've tried to adapt. I'm not an adaptable person, right? Think about this and notice how reflexive it is in your mind. The last thing to consider is make it work for you. So imagine that if you reject what I'm saying, fair enough, there may be reasons I'm wrong, but can you make it work for you? Because if you can make it work for you, if you can become more adaptable, then what would your life be like? What if you could adapt to your circumstances and always do well, right? It's not necessarily always, there's black and white thinking. And the last example I'll give you is one from relationships, where everyone out there is looking for the perfect partner. But I don't know that there is the perfect partner. Dating apps will tell you, keep swiping until you find the perfect person. They're out there. But in my overwhelming experience as a psychiatrist who's worked with a ton of people going through divorce, done a touch of marriage counseling, not my forte, what I found is that the most successful way to create a successful relationship is to adapt to the other person. Don't try to find someone who's a perfect fit for you. You need to learn how to adapt to them, and they need to learn how to adapt to you. That's not what's happening, and that's why we have a loneliness epidemic, we have a dating crisis, all of these different things. So lean into your adaptability. Stop thinking in terms of black and white. Really listen when people say something that you disagree with. Try your hardest to understand them. And if someone says, hey, this will work, and you say it doesn't work for me, you need to change.